Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Test Those Breasts podcast. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. I'm a retired teacher of 20 years and a breast cancer thriver turned staunch, unapologetic, loud supporter and advocate for others, bringing education and awareness through a myriad of medical experts, therapists, caregivers, and other survivors. A breast cancer diagnosis is incredibly overwhelming with the mounds of information out there, especially on Dr. Google. I get it. I'm not a doctor, and I know how important it is to uncover accurate information, which is my ongoing mission through my nonprofit. The podcast includes personal stories and opinions from breast cancer survivors and professional physicians, providing the most up-to-date information at the time of recording. Evidence, research, and practices are always changing, so please check the date of the recording and always refer to your medical professionals for the most up-to-date information. I hope you find this podcast a source of inspiration and support from my guests. Their contact information is in the show notes, so please feel free to reach out to them. We have an enormous breast cancer community ready to support you in so many ways. Now let's listen to the next episode of Test Those Breasts. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn, and today I have a wonderful guest on my show. Her name is Barbara Arbogast, and Barbara is a 10-year survivor of breast cancer and the author of the memoir, Spiculated Darkness. She lives in Reno, Nevada with her husband and 2 dogs. Hello, Barbara. How are you doing today?
Hi, it's nice to see you. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Really good. Good. Well, I want to let my audience know that you and I actually did have a lengthy conversation with our pre-interview call. So you have such a fun story, and especially about your memoir. And I can't wait to talk about that a little bit later on. But usually when I have survivors on, I usually ask them who they were before breast cancer, because as you and I spoke about, we all know that we sort of go through a kind of a crazy change when we're diagnosed, and then we get into our survivorship. But before we're diagnosed, we're like these different people. Like we're ourselves at the core, but a lot of things have changed. So who was Barbara before breast cancer?
Well, before breast cancer, I was an athlete and a software professional and a control freak. And I enjoyed spending time with my family and skiing and soccer and hiking and camping and learning and doing Reiki. And I put my more creative side kind of off on the back burner until retirement, even though I was aware of it. Now I kind of let my freak flag fly, as they say, and I focus on my creativity.
I love that. I love the freak flag. I have one. I'm kind of like, very different than I was before. But before I was super kind of a control freak as well. I sort of am maybe a little bit now, but so I want to talk about that control piece.
Okay.
Because when we are diagnosed, we kind of, some things change. So when were you diagnosed? What was your diagnosis, and what were your treatments?
Well, so I noticed a lump on my breast in May of 2015, and because I do my test, I tested my own breasts, like,
right. Good.
I had missed a mammogram the year before, so I tested every month, and then I notified my doctor. My doctor didn't think it could possibly be cancer because nobody in my family had ever had cancer, breast cancer, and he didn't possibly think it could be that. So he kind of, you can get a mammogram, but it's probably nothing. Well, I got the mammogram and it was something. And then I had dense breasts. So I had to have an ultrasound as well. And when I had the ultrasound, I saw this beautiful picture that is now on the cover of Spiculated Darkness. Yeah. So this is my tumor. And the spicula.
So those who are listening to this, Barbara is showing the cover of her memoir, Spiculated Darkness. And so, go ahead and describe that to us.
Okay. The doctor told me that I had this massive spiculated tissue that means it had no definition. It had tentacles. So basically, I thought it was really pretty. I looked at my ultrasound and I said, "Oh, that's really pretty." And the tech looked at me and was like, "No, it's really not." And I said, "Oh, I clearly can tell it's cancer. It's just, it looks pretty." It looked like a spider or a star. It was all black with these reaches in different directions. And so that was kind of a shock I think I gave the tech a shock. My reaction was not, oh my God, I have cancer. It was, oh, that's really pretty. So that was weird. But I had to have it biopsied, and I did that. And then on July 9th of 2015, which happens to be one of my closer college friends' birthdays, I was told that I had cancer. And the doctor called me on the phone, and I was driving, and he told me that I had grade 2 triple positive cancer. And that means it was fast growing, it was estrogen and progesterone feeding it, the hormones feeding it, and the HER2 protein also made the cancer grow. So all three things made the cancer cells grow, and so it grew really fast. And so when I noticed it, it was like, the size of a dime. Mm-hmm. By the time that I was actually treated, it was like this, and it was a sphere. It was huge. It was like bigger than a golf ball.
Okay.
It was a big lump in my breast. And I mean, I thought my breasts were getting bigger. I was all excited. I was getting new bra sizes. No, it was tumors. That was a bummer. So at the time that I was diagnosed, that was the deadliest form of breast cancer. So prognosis was kind of scary. And it turned out that I had multiple tumors in both of my breasts, and my right breast had this giant thing, and and there were a couple little ones, and the left breast had 3 or 4 little ones as well. So I didn't do a lumpectomy. If I would have done a lumpectomy, it would have left me disfigured. So I elected instead to have a bilateral mastectomy. That way the breast cancer was less likely to return, and I wouldn't be as scared about it with the anxiety of the return. And also, I had chemotherapy and immunotherapy. So my oncologist recommended that I have the mastectomy done after I had chemo. And I told her I had set up an appointment with a doctor locally to just have my mastectomy. And so it was already scheduled. And the oncologist said, if I can get a port scheduled for you, would you consider doing that first before you had the mastectomy? And I said, sure, if you can get the port scheduled in before the mastectomy, that would be great. But it was like boom, boom, boom. Like things went really, really fast. And as it turned out, as fate would have it, I got my port the Friday before I was supposed to have my breasts removed. So I started chemotherapy the day I was supposed to have my breasts removed. I had my port installed on a Friday, and on Monday I was getting chemo. So that's how quickly that part went. And I'm really glad that I had my mastectomy after chemo.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I want to go back to when you went to the doctor and the doctor said there's no way, it's probably not cancer. What was your age?
I was 44.
Okay, so you were 44.
Mm-hmm.
Can you, is there any way that you can recall why that, was the doctor an OBGYN?
Yes,
or?
It was my gynecologist.
So your gynecologist thought that because you didn't have anyone else in your family, because this is a myth. We know this is a myth. I mean, most people who get breast cancer don't even have it in their family. I don't have it in my family, and I don't have the BRCA gene or any of that. Yeah. So I want to emphasize that, because that is one of the myths out there that we all need to be aware of, that you have to have in your family, or more people get breast cancer if they have it in their family, if they have the BRCA gene. So what was the reaction of your doctor when they found out that you actually, in fact, had breast cancer?
He was shocked. Honestly, he was totally like, what do you mean you have breast cancer? You just have dense breasts. What do you mean you have breast cancer? And I was like, turns out you were wrong.
Was he gracious about that?
Yes, but I stopped seeing him after that.
Yeah,
I saw him one more time, and he was no longer my gynecologist.
Hopefully he was able to take that information and make good of it, and understand that you can't just tell somebody that they of course you're not going to have breast cancer because you don't even have it in your family. So so I just think that's such an important piece to amplify, just so that when other people go into their doctor and they hear those words, that they can advocate for themselves and say,
Yes.
actually, I don't have to have it in my family to have it. So yes, we need to do a test and let's get this done. Okay.
Yeah,
So
but
let's go.
that made it take longer for me to get my
Right.
mammogram and my ultrasound because he didn't think there was anything to worry about.
Right. So that's an important
And then
piece of
once
this.
he got the results, my brother is a radiologist, and my brother was on top of it. And my brother used to read mammograms for women in the state of Washington. That was his specialty. So when I sent him, I got my images from the Reno Diagnostic Center, and my brother came over, and he didn't live in Reno. He traveled to see me and to see the results, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's breast cancer," like right away. And so he started making sure that I got the appointments that I needed when I needed them as soon as I possibly could. And he was on top of it. And he went to medical school with people from the Reno Diagnostic Center. So they got me in early before they even opened because they didn't have appointments available. So they got me in before they opened, and I was able to get a PET scan done because I'm allergic to CT contrast, so I couldn't have a CT scan. So then I had to have a PET scan. So I went and I had a PET scan done, and a gentleman by the name of Ben, and I don't know his last name, but I'm eternally grateful, came in early for the day to do a PET scan for me. And I am grateful to the whole Reno Diagnostic Center for opening early so that I could get my PET scan
Yeah,
before they opened for the day.
you and I kind of have a little bit of a sort of a parallel, is that I recognize 100% how privileged I was when I was diagnosed,
Yes.
because the radiologist who worked at the breast center that I went and got my mammogram at, he wasn't working that day, but he was at my retirement party literally 3 days before I went in. And he was a friend of ours, and he is a friend of ours. And uh, I went in to get my mammogram, and another radiologist was there. And he's the one that originally told me, hey, we see these calcifications, we see this associated mass, we need to get you into a biopsy. Well, I called our friend and told him what had happened, and he was able to get his hands on those scans. And he told me that night that it was 95% chance or more that it was breast cancer. And on top of that, he was able to move my biopsy up by an entire week.
Awesome.
And I was able to get my biopsy that Friday, and he was able to call me 24 hours later on a Saturday to tell me that I in fact had breast cancer. So I always put it out there. I know that not everyone, I know there are people with a lot of barriers out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are people out there who they don't have that privilege. So I
Right.
recognize that right away.
I'm, yeah, so grateful, like beyond
Yeah.
grateful for the privilege that I have.
So walk us through your thought process. I know why, but can you explain to our audience why it is that you wanted to get right in there and do your mastectomy before the chemo?
Well, I just wanted to get it gone. I thought I didn't know cancer yet, and I thought that by getting the masses removed, I was stopping the growth. I didn't realize where cancer starts, how cancer starts, and that it only manifests as tumors later. So I didn't understand the micro growth of cancer. And so my doctor recognized that I didn't get that. So she just was like, listen, you have to do this. Do the chemo first. And I was like, okay, if it happens this way, I'll do whatever I have to let go. That was the first sign of get rid of your control freakness, because I couldn't control what was going to happen. And so I set it up so that whatever was supposed to happen could happen. And I was going to have it taken care of by August 15th. I was going to be in there one way or the other. So I was very fortunate, and I had the chemo first. And there are a number of reasons I'm glad for that. The first is because I think it's a better solution, but that's, obvious now. It wasn't obvious then. And it also wasn't obvious then that it would be attacking the cells, like really. But what I found out as I progressed through everything was the chemotherapy actually burned. I could feel it working. I could feel it working on my tumors. I could feel it eating away at my tumors. And by feeling that, I could help it. And so I was having dreams. And before I even knew I had cancer, I was having these dreams, these really weird dreams with the squiggly guy and these different colors and stuff. And these things that look like daffodils when you blow on them and they go, to make a wish. And so I didn't know that was what Herceptin receptors looked like. I had no idea that any of that. And then I got a picture of what a Herceptin receptors full looks like, a dandelion that you blow a wish on. And I had no idea. But so I had this dream, and I was having these dreams, and I was drawing these things for my friend at work. And I'm like, I'm having these dreams and I don't know what it's about. And then I got cancer, and then I was diagnosed, and then I saw the pictures, and I'm like, that's what I'm drawing. So something about me was recognizing right away the HER2 part. And my cancer, I had this googly-eyed guy that would show up in my dreams, and he'd change shape, and he'd play, and he had music too. He played do 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 do, like, and he would bounce and like a spring. And I started taking the Perjeta was the immunotherapy, and carboplatin was the chemo drug. And I started taking those. And when I was dreaming, all of a sudden, my googly eye guy with the spring changed, and he had a target on his back. And he stopped changing shape, and he stayed still like a rod with this target on him. And he would bounce, but he was bouncing like a pogo stick instead of like a spring. And so I used my imagination, and my white blood cells rode in on horses, and they were using, I know I love it. I'm a little weird, but I used my mind to help the medicine help me. So my white blood cells would rush in on their white horses, and they would use bows and arrows, and they would hit the bullseyes of these cells that now had bullseyes on them that I didn't know what they were. I had no idea any of this. And then, it seemed to work, but it burned my cells. The chemo was very effective. It did a lot of other things too. The side effects were brutal, but especially the first week after chemo, the side effects were changing every hour or so because my body was trying to figure out how to handle it, and it didn't know. And so I'd be going from puking to, diarrhea to then I'd have a rash, and then it would be gone, and then I'd have a rash again. And then it was just all over, and my body was like freaking out, didn't know what to do with all this. And so I lost my place in my answer.
Well, I love your imagination like that. I think I remember when I was getting the chemo, it was like a phoenix or something that was moving through my body and attacking and grabbing. And so it's interesting to hear someone else who actually imagined. I mean, we imagined something a little different, but
it doesn't matter.
It's
taking the medicine, knowing it's going to help you, and putting it to use with your mind as well, so that you're fully in it. Like your mental space is fully in healing and killing what's hurting you, and accepting the medicine. Yes, the medicine had these awful side effects, and there's no denying them. But instead of dwelling on the bad of the medicine, focusing on how it's helping you is super important. And using your imagination to do that also, I found very helpful.
I think my oncologist told me that the reason I was having, one of the reasons I was having the chemo first, because I had friends actually saying, why don't they just get in there and cut that sucker out of there? And I was wondering the same thing. And it's because I didn't understand cancer. I didn't understand how it worked. I didn't understand that there were different kinds of cancer. And according to the kind, it depends on whether, because all I had ever heard was people got their surgery and then chemo or radiation. So I just didn't understand at that time, but she had explained it to me too, that they want to find out what the efficacy was like. They wanted to see whether it was going to shrink the tumor. They wanted to, because if it ever happens again, they know that would work for me. So that's how it was explained to me. So having your explanation too is very helpful. So you move through, you have your chemo. Did you have a good response? Like, did your tumor shrink pretty quickly?
Well, it got rid of a couple of tumors. I've had multiple tumors in both breasts. Right. So it got rid of some of the tumors. I think I had one tumor remaining in my left breast that was just a little itty bitty guy. And it shrunk the tumor in my right breast, but it didn't go completely away.
Okay. So what happened from there?
Well, so I had a double mastectomy because I didn't want it coming back. I didn't want to worry, and I was rebuilt. But I'm really glad again that I had the chemo first because it took 8 weeks for me to be able to sit up on my own after my mastectomy. Because when they cut my breasts off or took them out or however you want to say it, they put in uh, expanders between the layers of my pectoral muscles. So, and they replaced everything. So everything had shifted. So, like, I still can't vacuum because the movement back and forth with my arms with resistance is painful in here. But in any event, it took me so long to be able to sit up by myself, and the amount of vomit, diarrhea, etc., that would have been in my bed because I could not get up would have just been a nightmare. I can't even imagine how disgusting it must have felt for those women who did the opposite direction. I mean, you can't get up. You roll over, but you can't even roll over all the way. I mean, um, it got to like eventually I was able to get out of bed, and wasn't able to sit up still. I would roll off the bed and I could guide myself to lean against the bed so that I could stand up again. But I didn't have the muscles in here to be able to lift my back up because my stomach muscles were useless. Apparently I used my breast muscle or my chest muscles a lot to do things. And I didn't realize nearly how involved my pectoral muscles were in everything I did.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad that that all just sort of fell into place. So, and that you were open to going ahead and doing chemo and trusting your oncologist. That's really good. So we're moving forward. You get through all your treatment. How did you get rid? Do you still have, are you metastatic or
No.
do you still have any tumors? How did you get rid of the other tumors?
The tumors were all taken away when I had my mastectomy.
Okay.
And then they also took out lymph nodes out of my. They took 3 from my right side and 1 from my left to see if it had metabolized into my lymph nodes, and it did not.
Good. Lucky. Woo. Same with me. They took a few out of my left arm and one out of my right arm and nothing was there.
Yeah,
So we move forward. When did you decide to write your memoir?
I was writing it while it wasn't. I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I was writing these flash fiction stories as I was being treated because I have dreams. Obviously, my dreams are pretty vivid and pretty weird. So all of my stories in here are actually dreams.
Okay. I
And
noticed that. Yep.
yeah, and like they started out being short and they got longer as I progressed. So it was at first. So I went in the order. Like the dreams are in the order that I had them. They're in the order of the diagnosis to all the way through till feeling better. So there are different stages of the process. There's the finding out and the initial shock and the total loss of control and the rug pulled out from under you. And then there's okay, so there's acceptance. There's like, okay, this is what's happening. What do I do? How do I fix it? And then there were the side effects. So there were the hot chills, the cold chills, the nausea, that whatever. But the side effects were really strong, and this hot flashes and cold chills were remarkable. They were every 20 minutes or so. And when I would go to sleep, I wake up drenched, and so I would have nightmares. So I had nightmares about you know burning my husband in bed. Like
Wow.
I had nightmares like of catching him of spontaneous combustion. So I had nightmares about this, and so they became stories. And so I just put myself in different. It was just either I was cancer or I was this or I was that, depending on the dream I was having. And at one point, my cousin was going through cancer at the same time as I was, and so I had a dream about him. And then he ended up passing away, but my story was already written before he had passed about him because I kind of knew he was going to go. And then I had to accept my new body because, of course, I had the expanders put in, and I was having reconstruction. After, like my breasts were gone, and then I had these things filled with liquid that would be filled in every once in a while, and every time I went to the doctor, and it was so painful. the stretching of the pectoral muscle, the stretching of the skin. It hurt so much. So I had to accept my new disfigured figure. So that's part. So the stories are in there also of the acceptance of my new figure and feeling like my body wasn't my own and all of that. So that's how I came up with onesies and how I, the body hoppers. It was all dreams.
So
Nightmares.
walk us through how your book is broken down. And you have it's dreams. Is there sort of a rhyme and a reason as to where you put each one of those little vignettes, I guess?
Yes, yeah. The little flash fiction stories. Yes, they're broken up into chapters based on the stage I was in. So like I have, for example, the first chapter is the diagnosis. The second chapter is loss of control. The third chapter is chemo. Fourth chapter is hot flashes. Fifth chapter is losing Kevin. That was my cousin. The sixth chapter is accepting body parts. Seventh chapter is yay life, because it was going to go on and I realized I was going to beat it. And then there was adjusting to my new body, adjusting to my new mind. And then I have dark tales from the spicula, being cancer, and then I had facing my fears. It went from like the full progression of my cycle. And then at the end, I have reflections. In the end of the memoir, I have reflections. After 10 years, I went back and reread everything and interpreted what it meant at the time when I was writing it, why I wrote it, kind of, and explain it. And so if people care, if they may not care. If they care, they may want to read that part at the end also. If they don't care, they don't have to read it. If they want to read it first so that they understand what the stories are about before they even read them, they may go to the back and read the ends and, or whatever order they want. But I wanted to provide that information for the reader and hopefully help somebody. I wanted people who read this, I want them to know they're not alone. People going through cancer, I want them to know they're not alone, that it's not normal, but like other people feel it. You're not alone is the main thing. You're never alone. I had so much love and so much help throughout my cancer. I had no idea that many people loved me. I had no idea that my family would be there like they were. My parents were divorced, and my dad and my stepmom would come and alternate times visiting with my mom. So my mom came to the first one, my dad came to the second one, and they alternated every single session I had of chemo. They were here. My husband was here too. My husband helped me too. But my husband had to also work. So he was working while I was going through this. I was working while I was going through this. I worked from home. I was a software developer and I worked from home. So we both were working, and my parents came to help take care of everything. They took care of feeding me, making sure that I ate. That was really important. And there's a book called Cancer Fighting Kitchen that I used that I highly recommend for anybody who's going through cancer. It helps. There's a mineral broth in it that is extremely important to keep your nutrition up when you're going through the chemo, and you can't lose too much weight because cancer is a very energy intensive sickness, and it uses a lot of your energy. And so you have to provide more energy for your immune system to be able to fight it. So it's important that you keep your weight not necessarily high, but like, don't let the fact that everything tastes like metal stop you from eating. Don't let the fact that you can't smell anything stop you from eating. Just eat anyway and make yourself a serving. Know what your serving size is and just eat all of it, even if you don't want to. You'll throw it up, whatever, just eat it anyway.
I had a friend of mine who told me, you may not really feel like eating, and you just might feel like sleeping as much as you can, especially right when you're in the middle of the treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Said, make sure you have, she says she always had grapes,
Mm-hmm.
some turkey slices, and I think some like crackers. And she said, just get out of bed, eat it, and then go back to bed. And just, even if it's just a little bit. And she was really, really driving home how important that was. So very good advice. So I'm really glad.
The sleeping, I slept, 15 hours a day.
Yeah.
And my oncologist was worried. She was like, you're sleeping too much. I said, no, my body wants to sleep. If my body wants to sleep, it's getting sleep. Don't worry. I'm getting up, I'm getting food, and I'm going back to bed. But if my body wants, Yeah, I'm walking, I'm moving. I would sit and I would think about what I had to program and do my little stationary bicycle, and then I'd go program, and then I'd go to bed. Then I'd
You
get
were
up,
good.
I'd eat.
You were good. So, okay, so I'm really glad that you had so much support. That's amazing because
Me
yeah,
too.
not everyone has that support, but what I will say is that the breast cancer community is so huge. I had a friend of mine that said it's the sisterhood of all sisterhoods, and it really is. There's
Mhm.
just so many people who have been touched by it, whether they've had it or had somebody in their family. And so even if people don't have someone who's at home or a whole family who comes over to take care of you, there are people out there who can support you, and there are usually community members in your community that can help you out. So okay, so your book, what I would love to know is when did it launch, first of all?
Okay, so I launched it this past October in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Good.
And
And what has the response been?
well, I haven't really marketed it, so I mostly wrote it just for people like me who, I don't know, I had to get it out. I wanted to share it. So, I mean, I haven't marketed it at all. This is like the most marketing
This is
I'm
it.
doing.
We're going to put it in
um,
the show notes.
yeah, but I've had friends of mine buy it. I've had people that I work with buy it. I've had some strangers that I work in a bookstore part time, or some of it. I haven't been working because I broke my leg, but I was working in a bookstore when I released it. And people that came to the bookstore were interested in local authors or whatever, and I'd point them towards my book because it was for sale in the local bookstore. So I've sold it to people that I don't know in the bookstore as well through
Very good.
graphics books.
Well, we will make sure that we will amplify that. We'll put it in the show notes and we'll, share it and things like that. I know that for podcasting, I started the podcast as a healing mechanism. So being able to write all that down, how did that affect your mental health?
That was huge. Being able to communicate it and share it with people and stuff was really, really important. Everybody doesn't have to read my story. It wasn't about them reading it. It's about me getting it out.
Yes.
It's about me not feeling like cancer is so taboo or breast cancer is such a bad thing that you can't survive it or that you can't, I don't know. I wanted to give hope, inspiration. I wanted to be proof that there's life after cancer, that you can continue on. And I wanted people to know they're not alone during it and they're not alone after it. And then in my book, I also have blank pages. I have resources and then I have reader notes because, people might not want to put it in their diary. They might not want to put it in a journal. They might not want to put it where anybody else can see it. But if they put it at the back of the cancer book, nobody's going to go look. So they might feel comfortable feeling just putting, today I feel like shit. That's fine.
Right.
Whatever they want to put. Just it's important to express yourself and get whatever is inside out. Because if you keep it in, it's like keeping cancer in. You're holding on to it. And if you let it go, you let everything go and you can get better.
Yeah,
That's
no, that's such a huge, really a great point there because, everybody has their own way of,
mhm.
letting it out. And
Yep.
so having someone to be able to do that. Thank you for writing that book. And I just think it's so unique. You do not find cancer books out there like yours often
No.
at all. With that fun freak flag expression. And I love it. I love how you used your imagination and your dreams to really be able to put that together. And I feel like this will resonate with a lot of people. I want to wrap this up by asking you. I always ask survivors, and you kind of have sprinkled a little bit of this throughout the interview anyway, but
Mhm.
what kind of big piece of advice can you give to someone? Because this really kind of relates to you anyway. What advice do you have for people who have never, ever been diagnosed, regardless of whether they're, in their, 60s or 70s, but even going back to 20s, 30s, 40s?
Get your mammograms every year. Find out if you have dense breasts. Your gynecologist will let you know. You'll be able to tell, if they're I don't know. Mine were always kind of perky and I never really needed a bra. So they were just kind of up and high and happy. And so they were dense. And so I find out if they're dense. If they're dense, get a 3D image and 3D mammogram. It's worth the expense to pay extra. If you have a BRCA gene and you know about a BRCA gene, I have friends with that. They also recommend getting ultrasounds. If I would recommend getting an ultrasound every other year if you've got dense breasts, because they don't see everything in mammograms. It's really hard to see them. If you find out you have cancer, get a therapist. Even if you don't have cancer, I would still recommend getting a therapist. I think everybody should have one, but my therapist is fantastic and I've been with her for 10 years. So I highly recommend, the therapist route if you can manage it. I mean, some of these things aren't necessarily manageable for everybody. So if you can't afford some of this because it's more expensive, it is worth the money. But do a GoFundMe, get help to afford it. Find a way because it is worth it.
And
there are, Moms Number One could help you if you're in Reno. There are organizations that are here to help pay for the extra things that might be necessary and do it.
Good point.
And then
I
Mhm.
will say, I will say that those ultrasounds or, an extra screening, mammogram and an extra screening, I would go so far as to say, do it every year. I would say mammogram, ultrasound every single year, or breast MRI aside from the mammogram every single year, because things can change dramatically even in less than a year, because the year before, when I had my mammogram and ultrasound, they didn't see anything. And
Okay.
less than a year later, they did. So every year, as far as I'm concerned, and definitely there are community members out there, organizations who can help with some of the cost of certain services. And I love your advice about getting a therapist. I'm a huge advocate for that. Even if you're married or have a significant other, doing it together also is a really good idea, because it is kind of a hardship on
Yeah.
relationships too. We know that 40% of marriages end up in divorce at diagnoses like this, if you can believe that.
Oh, I can believe it. Yeah. I told my husband, don't pull Bernie. We had a friend of the family when I was a kid who left his wife when she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So I asked my husband to please not do that to me.
It's
He
devastating.
didn't. He did the opposite. He went to every
Good.
appointment with me. And I
Wonderful.
was on gabapentin, which made my eyes blurry, so I couldn't drive, and I would see upside down and backwards. So gabapentin really messed with me.
I bet that was really good for your book.
Yeah, it added to things. It made me kind of psycho. So I was on gabapentin for 3 years and it made my hands numb, and to the point where I cut myself with knives and stuff, and so I had to not cut things because I couldn't see to drive. I couldn't drive for 3 years. But gabapentin was really, really bad. It made me totally psycho. And if you can do acupuncture brought my health back. I have feelings in my hands now again. There's only places in my armpit where I still can't feel, and of course I can't feel my chest, but except for underneath, I feel like I'm always wearing a bra. But uh, the the gabapentin was really hard on me, and I recommend not taking it if you can possibly avoid it. And I highly recommend acupuncture instead,
Okay. I did
because
acupuncture.
mhm, it can renew the nerves,
Yeah.
like the nerve signals and stuff, and it was really good.
Good. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation. What would you like to leave us with before we wrap up today?
Well, I want to ask you questions about you because I don't know about your journey. So, what was your diagnosis?
So I had stage two, HER2 positive, ERPR negative,
Oh,
and I was diagnosed in June of 2022, and it was literally 1 week after my retirement party from the school district. And so that was yay, celebrate my first year of retirement. And I went through the chemo first, and then I had a double mastectomy and reconstruction. I actually did that in New Orleans at the Center for Restorative Breast Surgery. I had the deep flap surgery where they took the tissue from my abdomen and reconstructed my breasts. Yeah. So, and I didn't even know there was such a thing. Who knew?
Mm-mm.
And we don't have anyone in our area that does that kind of
Not
surgery.
that kind of surgery, no. Dr. Janiga did mine.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
originally was going to go to Dr. Janika, but then I ended up going to New Orleans after I did a lot of research on microsurgeons, and because you definitely don't want to just go to any breast surgeon
Oh
for
no,
the deep.
no.
I mean, they're using all your veins, nerves, and all that stuff and pulling them up to your breast. And you kind of want somebody who sort of eats, sleeps, and breathes that kind of
Mhm.
surgery. So I've interviewed quite a few surgeons around the country so that people know where they are, in case they want to go and do that. And then, yeah, and then I had a revision on my breasts the following year. And during my journey, when all my scans, they found another tumor in my thoracic cavity. It was
Oh,
a thymoma tumor, and it was big, and it was encapsulated and benign, and they had removed that shortly, like 5 weeks after my first breast surgery. So I went through quite a few, like three big surgeries. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I went
that's
through
my
like
story.
six, I think.
So
Six.
now, yes. So now I started the podcast, and then eventually I started a nonprofit, and really was trying to figure out ways to run the nonprofit because I didn't really understand
Mhm.
enough about nonprofits. And now things are going to the next level. We've got a much better plan and vision, and I'm surrounding myself with smart people, and they're helping me move this forward. And I will continue to interview people all the time because I feel like that this has been really good for me, and it's been really good for so many other people. And so I just continue to meet people like you and hear your story, and it just all the stories resonate with different types of people.
So you don't have to take any aromatase inhibitors or anything like that.
I do
You're
not.
very lucky.
Yes, I was very lucky in that way
Yes.
because most people that I meet, they are ERPR positive. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have to take aromatase inhibitors or tamoxifen, and tamoxifen was brutal. So I couldn't do tamoxifen. I had my ovaries removed and my uterus removed so that I didn't have to do tamoxifen and I could do an aromatase inhibitor.
I ended up having a total hysterectomy as well.
Yeah.
I actually started my hysterectomy back in 2012. They actually removed my uterus because I had a hematoma on it that they couldn't get to pop it. They were trying to get in there and to pop it to release the blood,
Mhm.
and they couldn't get to it. And he's like, I got to take the whole thing out. So he took the whole thing out. And then during my first surgery, they did a what was it, my second surgery? They took my ovaries out. So I have nothing either. So
Okay.
well, I'm excited about your book, and I really think you should start marketing it more because it is very intriguing. And I think that there are people out there who have the kind of imagination and interesting way of looking at things that I really think that would resonate with your book because it's pretty cool. I
It's
really like
intense.
it. Yeah.
It's
Well,
not a fluffy,
no, it's
you
totally
can do it
different.
cheerleading book like most it's not full of positive affirmations like most of these
Right?
things are. It's just sort of like raw.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I mean, it's fun. It's fun too for artistic people, and that can really picture the vivid descriptions that you have. So, good job on that. Well, this has been great, Barbara. Thank you so much. I appreciate your story from who you were before breast cancer, your diagnosis and treatment, and then into your survivorship with your memoir. That is just an amazing work that you've done, and then of course your advice to people who've never been diagnosed, and it's such great advice.
Thank you.
And we will put everything in the show notes, how people can reach you and any kind of resources. I would like that book that you're talking about, the one about food, if you
Oh,
can send me that.
Cancer Fighting Kitchen. It's I think I listed it in here. I should have if I didn't. Bad for me. Uh but I think I put it in here.
We'll put it in the show notes as well. And Yeah. So
Oh,
thank you
yes, I
so
do. I have useful books, Cancer Fighting Kitchen.
Okay, wonderful. All right, I'll put the link in there as well too. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I love your background. That's a great background that you have there. And magical dreams inspire whimsical pages. Love it. Very artistic. All right, Barbara. Well, thank you so much. And to my audience, thank you again for joining us on this episode. And we will see you on the next episode of Test Those Breasts.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Barbara. Friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I hope you got some great, much needed information that will help you with your journey. As always, I am open to guests to add value to my show, and I'm also open to being a guest on other podcasts where I can add value. So please reach out if you'd like to collaborate. My contact information is in the show notes. And as a reminder, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast will truly help build a bigger audience all over the world. I thank you for your efforts. I look forward to sharing my next episode of Test Those Breasts.